Hello, world. It's Warren Peterson. This is Saturday, June 19th, and we're up to episode 15 of Viva Virtuoso podcasts. And we have what I think you'll find to be a pretty brilliant show today with a couple of very entertaining as well as talented guys, Noor Cherie and Jonas Peterson. Uh, no relation, from Symphonic Planet, and we're going to learn all about Symphonic Planet, which is just the coolest concept in the world, and I think you're going to love it as well as love our guests. So let's welcome them. Nora Jonas, nice to see you here, and welcome aboard.
Nice to see you too. Thanks for having us, Warren.
Glad to be here.
Ab-
Yeah.
Absolutely. And where is here, by the way?
We are in Merida in the Yucatan of Mexico.
In the tropics.
In the tropics. We're in a beautiful colonial city, the colonial part of it. So where we are is very, 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 very old. But it's really beautiful, extremely beautiful out here.
It's great here. Yeah, the rainy season just started.
Oh, yeah.
We had like a week of rain. Before that, when we came here, it was just dry season. So the first like few months, it was just dry. We came from Los Angeles and we wanted to have a nicer wet weather, but it didn't happen. But yeah, now we finally got the rain.
Well, let's start at the end and talk about what Symphonic Planet is. But I think there's going to be a lot to decompose and deconstruct uh, because there's so many stories behind the story. Symphonic Planet, the best way I can describe it, but I'll leave it to you, is if I was pitching this would be something like the real world meets great performances meets Naked and Afraid or something thereabouts. But there's some reality, there's lots of nature, and there's lots of music, and I think there's lots of fun just watching you guys have a good time together. Uh, but why don't you tell us about the concept and what this project and series is?
You want to take this one?
You're looking at me. It's an ever-changing thing. Well, Symphonic Planet. Essentially, we're two guys traveling the world. We're two musicians, so we're traveling the world with a purpose. We're trying to find, interesting music and meeting people, and you know, trying to get inspiration from other places than where we were before, which was Hollywood. Dark studios. We all had we had a life that was kind of like kind of similarly. We went into a direction where we both realized we didn't want to go there anymore, where we realized maybe there's more to life than just work. And so we decided to basically just leave everything behind, and travel the world with our instruments and our gear and everything. We have all our studio equipment with us, and so we make music, we meet people, we record them, we make videos. Yeah, there's so much we do. We hire orchestras all around the world, so yeah, that's one of the things we do. I guess there's many more.
There's a lot of different facets of Symphonic Planet. I think at its core, it's a lifestyle choice, and we have had this mission where Jonas and I have wanted to inspire others like ourselves to push the boundaries of their comfort zones and whatever passions they may have or interests. And we do that through storytelling and through innovation and creativity, and through art. And a lot of that is through discovery. I mean, the idea, like Jonas said, we both reached a point in our careers and our experience, not just in Hollywood, but from even before that. I mean, I was a Marine. I was a United States Marine Corps musician before that, and we both had immigrated to Los Angeles, and we had lived this life in two parallel universes in a way, and realized that there's a point in which that is this the end to this for us? Each person's desires and dreams are different from one another, and what makes you happy. And we reached a point where we exactly weren't happy anymore. So we sought to change that by doing something completely radical with our lives, and with what we wanted to do with what we loved. And that was simply just to, like you said, to change our life, change a lifestyle, to do something maybe out of the ordinary. And for us, that answer was to travel the world to discover, um, you know, new narratives or undiscovered things for us. That is, because a lot of it's all there. All the information, all the cultures, all the people, all the music, all the art. It's all there. It's there for us to discover because it's new to us, and we want to share with people like ourselves what we're discovering, but through creativity, through innovation, through technology, and through content. So we built our company, which became a company. Our project became a company to promote that, and through our exploration of different music and cultures. So yeah, and it's neat because now, especially now, we've jumped into, like you said, it's always ever changing. Like, our mission keeps evolving, and what we do, how we create, keeps evolving as well. Just as much as our experiences is changing around us, and so we conform to the evolution um, of how we're going through life right now. Essentially, 1 minute, I mean, we started just as composers and mixing engineers and musicians, composing to the idea of what would it be like, the imagination of what would it be like to go somewhere else, and if you had your own soundtrack for your own experience, what would that sound like? We went from that to trying to discover sound phenomena in different strange locations that are not exactly very accessible to the average tourist, and recording that and using that in compositions to create authentic music experiences out of that. And then it evolved to, doing video content to complement that, because we want people to see, to experience it, visually, what we were trying to do with the, sonic auditory, music and everything, the sounds that we were collecting. And it just, keeps stacking up into, eventually having our own orchestra in the studio, um, and then becoming more serious filmmakers and designing software, which are these kind of like these souvenirs from all around the world, our travels, for people to interact with, so they can have their own experience. Because we just want people we want to bring an experience that we're having to people as well. And so there's just like so many different layers, but at the end of it, again, it's really just to push the boundaries of your comfort zone and your ideas and your imagination through innovation and travel.
And I think one of the things that you do that's really special is, as you're going through that discovery process, you're really engaging your audience so that I, for one, or any viewer, would feel like they're making that discovery at the same time that you are. And I think that's just a really nice quality, that you're not presenting it so much as a documentary, but come on and live this life with us.
Right.
But yet you still have if I understand correctly, a little bit of a framework or structure that you try to establish in your different locations. Is that correct? From which you can thread all these other themes in.
Yes, I believe you're right, and I also, there's another side to that we have to be extremely flexible. Every place we go and every venture we go on is, it's going to have to be approached differently in some ways, but we have an idea, and then that, it may follow it, or the structure may follow, but then, sometimes you have to be flexible to move things around in that structure, just because that is just the way it goes.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, we've been kind of doing this for, what is it, like 6 years now or something, like overall, or we like started working together and writing music together, and then going on like the first like little trips. Our first trips was just Death Valley, which is like kind of the closest, cheapest, exotic location to Los Angeles, right? That still looks like a crazy desert, and it's just different. And it was, the first thing we did. And from them over the years, we've just done, little trips like you would usually do when you do, I don't know, when you film a documentary or something, or you go on a vacation. You go somewhere for like a week or two, and it's very intense, and then you go back home, and then that's it, and it was very nice. But that was kind of has built up to what we're doing now, which is basically just leave everything behind and really live this life, because we realized everything else is really is hard to not, it's either a vacation or it's like a film shoot where it's literally you just show up somewhere for a week, you film everything, and then you leave, and you feel like it's almost like disrespectful to the people there if you don't actually take the time to to get to know them and actually live there and actually experience the culture, if you really want to share that with the world, that's really what we are trying to do. We really, I mean, that's the other thing, that's like we have this like grand ideas of bringing the world closer to each other, to the people, right? And kind of eliminating stereotypes, right? Now we're in Mexico, after 4 years of Trump, and it's just like the most amazing place I've ever been, and it's just sharing that, that's what it's all about. I mean, it's one of the things, you know what I mean? Yeah.
And back to your question, Warren, the structure we've been building this structure over that, through trial and error, and really just by doing, and that structure keeps evolving. So it's always changing. And this point about flexibility, it's just like it's always changing for us because each place is different, and as time goes by, everything else is different. It's not. It's while we're trying to develop the system that is consistent, it doesn't quite work like that all the time, which is kind of the exciting part about what this is.
Yeah, which leads me to my first question of the night, and I have a lot of questions for you. All right, so let's run through really quickly, and this is not the question. How many places, I'm not going to say countries, but how many places have you been to so far? Are you counting? Have you lost count? You're not counting anymore, are you?
We're not
counting anymore. I can tell you, I can list out the places that we've been so far. I can think
like
right,
just go. Roughly, I would say about 10-ish or something. Do you think?
No, it's a little more than that.
Ish.
I think it's especially he missed out on a couple, but
yeah.
Let's see, it was Singing Sand Dunes, Death Valley, and we went there several times. So and the thing is, like, each location has like multiple different parts to it. So there's like quite a few in Death Valley, ghost towns down in southern Utah, the Rim of the World, the old Spanish Trail, which takes you through several states, starting in New Mexico, Borneo, Malaysia. Now we've had Mexico.
We had the one crazy Europe trip where within like 10 days we like jumped all over the place.
Northern England.
I've done that.
Yeah. Northern England, Singing Ringing Tree, several places in. See, it was 3. So 3 places in Italy. So that's now 10. The Sea Organ in Croatia. Anything else?
All right. So
about that.
All right, so most people, I think, usually, I'm sure you get the question of like, so how do you get used to all of the differences? You get the question of the cultural differences and this and that. I'm going to flip that around a little bit, and I'm going to ask you, what are the inherent commonalities that you've noticed? Like what have you, I'm sure there are things that you've traveled to all of these places, and you've noticed oddly. And Jonas, I know you had one about Claro. You had a comment about that at one point. What are the commonalities that you've noticed in all of these places?
Yeah, I mean, the Claro, that's the language thing that I'm starting to realize. It's interesting because I've been living in America now for 5 years, just speaking English. But I grew up in Austria and Germany, and now here coming to Mexico, I'm starting to learn Spanish tiny bit. And people keep saying, "Sí, claro." Claro means like sure, and claro is the same word in German. You say like claro, Claro. Yeah. But I mean, that's just a little detail. I mean, the big commonality is probably, you everywhere you find people that are just like that are willing to take you in
They're
and
generous
gen-
and they're very friendly and hospitable. And
yeah,
when you give them, when you show that you're interested in their culture, you're interested in them, uh, and you want to be a part of their community or you want to honor them, I think everywhere we've gone, they adopt you essentially.
yeah,
And I think everywhere you go, when you give, when you're being real and you're authentic, you come with the mindset that you don't have these expectations on of these people, not like you would if you're a tourist, but you come and you're humbled by that. I think the commonality between all of that is that people are good and beautiful everywhere, wherever you go. And I saw this, in my travels before, the inception of Symphonic Planet, is that just the moment that you give them, you show interest and you give them a chance to share with you what what's beautiful, and you share that beauty. I think that's a definitely common denominator between all these cultures.
I have something else to add. That's just
Go for it.
that's just something that it's just weird. But I remember, before I was traveling the world, having these ideas about, you travel to a third world country and you think like, oh, you're gonna land somewhere in the jungle and there's like nothing there, and so some of those things are like there's a Walmart right here around the corner. There's a McDonald's everywhere. You're like you can fly into Africa and there's literally a city just like the city you live in right now, wherever that is. It's because it's just weird because when you think about it, it's the same thing. With Mexico or something, people have these pictures of like little villages and there's nothing there and everything's broken and whatever. But we're here in a city. There's everything there we have in Los Angeles. It's and every country is like that. It's that's for me. It's important to understand that like when people think about traveling, they always think like, oh my God, like how am I going to be able to talk to people? Everybody speaks English everywhere, and if not, you can. It's so easy, whether whatever Google Translate or something. Just because these things are reasons for people to say like, oh, I can't travel the world, because
It's definitely not within their comfort zone.
yeah,
Yeah.
That's the other side to that is also musically, creatively. We
That
came
too.
down here knowing nothing. Like we took a big shot in the dark, never been to the Yucatan, and also there's not very much information or content out there highlighting a very specific culture about music or here, and it's extremely vibrant. But when we were doing our research, it was kind of appalling because there's a lot of information about mariachi music, about the other side of Mexico, about the Yucatan, about the Mayas, the Mayan people. That is still they still live vibrantly in these small towns and they still speak ancient Mayan amongst each other. The information is not as available, and the truth is that I think we've proven that theory is that no matter where you go, even the most unlikely places, there is something special there, regardless, and you just have to dig in and find it. And once you do, it's there. You find it. It's right there, and that's what's your treasure hunter essentially.
So you didn't exactly start out in the Yucatan, and you didn't start out in Hollywood either. So I'm hoping both of you can just back up a little bit in your own personal stories and familiarize our audience with your skill set and kind of how you got to Hollywood and what kinds of things that you were doing there that ultimately led to this point of decision to make Hollywood a transfer point as opposed to a destination.
That's a very good way of saying that.
yeah,
It is a
yeah.
transfer point. You want to go
Yeah,
first?
yeah. Okay. So I grew up playing the violin as I started when I was 10. So starting when you're 10 is a little too late to actually become a virtuoso classical musician, right? You have to like start at 6 or 7 or something at least, or 3.
Didn't know there was an age requirement.
That's there's an international law and UN code.
Right, exactly. No, but I really, because so anyways, like I was also not really like practicing much as a kid and all that. So I always played violin as a kid, but it was never supposed to be a career or anything like that. I wasn't like into it like this, and I didn't have parents that pushed me or something. So I was more artistically interested. I started playing guitar as a teenager, and then started making beats and all these things. I never really knew which one of these things I really want to pursue. And I remember when high school came to an end, I forced myself to make a decision between filmmaking and music, and I decided music, because by that point I was making as much movies as I was making music. And so I decided music, and then so I studied musicology and became a sound engineer, which doesn't really connect, but yeah, I learned everything I need to started recording bands. I was living in Vienna, Austria at that time, and I started recording heavy metal bands mostly. So for many, many years, I was only recording heavy metal, and then it got softer and softer, So and I loved it, and so I kind of put the violin aside, and that was my, I really, for 15 years of my life, I was really a sound engineer with all my heart and all my energy. I put everything in it. And, the goal was to make it to Hollywood and work on the big movies, And I made, I got there eventually. I eventually started, in Vienna. I started working with, bigger and bigger people. I was introduced to Alexei Gudusman. He's a incredible violinist, in Europe. And so I started working as one of the top violinists. But I was a sound engineer, and he was working for Hans Zimmer, and so that's how I got to meet Hans Zimmer in Vienna. And I worked on the Sherlock Holmes movie that he was working on at that time, and that's how I got to Hollywood eventually. He gave me his phone number, and he was like, "Yeah, just call me. We'll figure something out for you." So I was like, "Well, I don't need to hear that twice, I mean, it wasn't that simple, of course. It took me a couple of years in Vienna to kind of like figure out how to do this and plan everything. And I was working like day and night to make enough money to be able to afford, to move across, the world to Los Angeles, and and so I did that. I landed in Hollywood, and started trying with all my connections. Of course, I called Hans, and he was like, pick up. And then he was always somewhere. Like, I remember he was like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm in New York right now, Spider-Man premiere. Can you call me next week?" And it just kept going. And I was like, I'll just start calling other people and see how I can get into, his studio, because I met, other people that worked with him. And, that was just for a couple of years. I was just trying that, until eventually I actually got a call from a studio where they were saying, "Hey, we have an open position. Are you interested?" And for me, that was honestly the pinnacle of my career, because I realized that was always the dream. If I make it to that point where they call me, they have an open position, I was like, I made it. I didn't even need more than that. But yes, I was invited to an interview, and then, and it all went amazing. But then they chose somebody else for the position, because they found a younger guy that was more into whatever it was. I don't know. But
still, you got the call.
Exactly. And for me, that's why I just celebrated that. And I know how these things go. And now that I hire people myself, it's not even I wasn't quite the right fit anymore. It was more like in that interview, I realized that, they looked at my resume and they're like, "Wow, this is incredible. Why do you want to work here in a way?" So anyways, it was still, back then I was really kind of crushed by that, because that was my one goal that I've worked towards the last 15 years, just as one job, being a sound engineer at a studio in Hollywood. And my dream was just like having a full-time job, everything taken care of. And my dream was literally just being inside. I had no interest in traveling or being outside or anything. It's just like Hollywood. So that didn't happen, and so I didn't know what to do with my life. I was like, so what now? That was the whole goal. Now, what am I gonna do? And so I wrote down the perfect like dream life that I would live if I was to wake up tomorrow with $300 million in the bank. What would my dream life be? And then so I realized that actually, if I had that much money, I wouldn't actually want to sit in the studio all day. And then I realized, I want to be outside. I want to meet people. Like all these things. And then so that's when we started, throwing around ideas about traveling. That's kind of when I met him, and because he's been more a traveler than I was. I've never been a traveler. I just moved for a job. And so yeah. I mean, that for me, not getting that job, was the best thing that ever happened to me. And then I mean, just to finish my life story in that sense, we didn't start traveling right away. So I actually started another business. I realized part of my plan that I wrote down, what I would do as a millionaire, is what I would play violin, and I would actually wanna play on songs that people send me and arrange strings for it and these kind of things, because I've always done that when I was younger, and I just love that. I just love songs that have strings in it, in film music, with violins and big orchestra. Like that's just my passion. And so I was like, what the hell? I just set up a website and offer that because I can't lose anything anymore anyways. So I set up a website and said, I'm a violin player. I offer orchestra recordings. I can play it all myself because I'm a sound engineer. I know how to, make something sound like a real orchestra, even though I play it all myself. Like, I can play how many violin layers I need and viola layers. I'm playing viola too. And so, I spent some time making like a template to get it really to sound like an orchestra. And I put up a website that said, I offer orchestra recordings, and then, my credits from my sound engineering career. I had, quite a few credits. And so that surprisingly actually worked out, and people really started liking me, hearing me playing violin, and so people started hiring me, and that's what I've been doing ever since. That's my day job now. People send me their songs or their tracks, film music, anything, and I record violins. When I'm in Los Angeles, sometimes we have bigger live orchestra, go to studio and do all these things, depending on what people want. So yeah, that's my life.
He also he loved that he movies, but he also a lot of how he paid his way to the States. He was editing for TV shows here in the States.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And so he has an extensive film editing background professionally, and then at some point, Jonas wrote a track for Disney, and he won a Clio Award. So
yeah, I didn't quite write it. I have to say that legally. But yeah. Anyways, it was
quote unquote. But he did win a Clio Award, and so he did reach his pinnacle Hollywood career, I guess you could say.
Yeah, and I got the big credits and all that. It's almost like I got the big credits without the terrible life that comes with that sometimes, where you have this nonstop stress and no sleep and all that. I mean, I had that for years, right? And then I just decided to that there's more to life than that. I still miss it sometimes, and I take on sometimes interesting projects, and then it's stressful for like a certain amount of time, and then after that I'm just like, okay, that was that.
And then you're back to your quote unquote normal life. Your normal
right,
life.
exactly.
Which is totally abnormal for most people, right?
Yeah.
Hey, you know what? Everybody's talking about a new normal. Let's make that the new normal.
Yeah.
I guess my turn.
Yeah, the journey of Noor.
The journey of Noor. Well, I have a very different background, but I don't know, some things in common. But I grew up in a very um, multicultural family, and I'm half Malaysian, half Venezuelan. I grew up in the cotton south of Florida, um, and uh, and I grew up in a very musical family. My parents are professional musicians, and and so I've been to a lot of corporate wedding gigs, and I played them with played in the family band. And at first, I was primarily into martial arts, and I used to compete in the U.S. Open, and I had a title, well, once. And so I was also there's a physical side, and I always had this knack. Um, my father was very curious and interested in a lot of subjects overall, and so he kind of spilled over to me in terms of the interest of the world and traveling and different cultures and geography and anthropology, and so and attached with the music and growing up and playing various styles of music and being introduced to that and hearing that, just kind of I grew up in a very worldly environment, and it was very important for my family that I know where I come from. So I spent a lot of time traveling to get to know who I am and what my family. And so I came from a very adventurous family. Um, and at some point, my parents asked me when I was like 15, what would you like for your birthday? And I said I would like an adventure, and they sent me off to a survival school in North Carolina, and that also kind of opened up these doors for me to do another survival school in the deep jungle in Malaysia. And so I've always had this kind of wanderlust, uh, but really not like I'm gonna hike up. What is that hike everybody does in LA? Um,
Oh, Runyon Canyon.
Runyon Canyon. Yeah, to me, that's not a hike. To me, a hike is I need to carry at least 3 days of food, and there needs to be nobody around in yoga pants, and so and you got to fight coyotes or stuff. That to me is a hike. So that was my I was always a person attracted to the extremes of environments and cultures, and same kind of deal with music in a way. So I because I grew up in a musical family, my stepmother is a professional flutist. My father played various instruments, and I didn't find out until I was like 15. My dad was a pop star in Malaysia, so I didn't know that. He's an extremely humble person, but I grew up in a very heavily a jazz oriented background and family environment. So and I started gigging earlier, performing earlier professionally with my parents, and so I wasn't a professional musician, but I played with professionals, and it was a fantastic start for me. And I used to write a lot of songs. So I was a bit of a songwriter, and while my parents were out at gigs, I would try to speed record things in the studio that we had, and then eventually I get in trouble because I didn't know what hard drive space was, so I used up all the hard drive space. But so over time, I went to college, and I dual enrolled at was at two universities playing music, and I got burned out just with school. But I had all these interests, and I was filling up a lot of demands and needs in terms of the gigging community. So I was learning multiple instruments so that I could, support that. And I had, I wasn't the filmmaker that Jonas was, but I had experience being on film, being in a martial arts film stunt team. Um, so I had experience acting and being in front of the camera and doing a lot of kind of action scenes and whatnot. So my martial arts and my kung fu and my music kind of went hand in hand with my life until a point where my parents had a suggestion, and I thought it was totally out of left field. But they said, "Have you thought about trying playing to play music in the military?" And I was like, "Are you nuts?" I was one of the most tree hugging people you meet, and this idea actually I was sold on it, and so um, I signed up with the Marines, which I think my parents was trying to get me not to sign up with the Marines, but sign up with like the Navy or Air Force, something a little bit safer. But if I was going to do something again with the extremes, I'm going to go all the way. So I enlisted in the Marine Corps as a musician, and I auditioned and passed with flying colors, and on an instrument that actually wasn't my major instrument, but it became a major instrument, and so I enlisted as a bass player, which in fine lettering in my contract in the bottom says maybe required to minor or major in percussion. So for 4 years of my life thereafter, after I went to boot camp or recruit training and did advanced combat training, and went to the Navy School of Music. Graduated as a bass player, but I because I had already kind of this already working knowledge, and I'd been in college for music already, I got to focus on arranging and other higher concepts. Um, I basically 4 years of my life I was a percussionist in the Marine Corps, and I did play bass, but not as often. So most of my life, if you're a musician, I played quarter notes for a living for 4 years, and it was one of the most monotonous things you could do as a job. And I had it was my career, and as well as maintaining my combat readiness as a Marine. As a Marine, you have to be both, but being a musician, when you are a melodic player and you're not being told that you can't do that because you have to do what all these ceremonies, and you carry a giant instrument that's bigger than you, can't see over, and I'm crashing cymbals or bass drum. It put life in perspective, and there was a whole very I had a very deep journey at one point where music became very it just lost a lot of its color and value, and it was just very desensitizing. And but some experiences in my life that I had during that time changed my perspective on understanding the value of rhythm and these things, and I was able to flip what felt desensitizing and actually found a lot of love for that. So when I left, I was stationed in San Diego, and when I left the Marine Corps, and I had done a lot of touring, even prior to the Marine Corps, I was in a touring choir, and it brought me on tour through Europe, singing for Pope John Paul at the Vatican, to singing with the Vienna Voice Choir in Vienna, and then there and so on and so forth, and then in the Marine Corps, traveling in the Marine band all over, and I worked as an arranger as well. I arranged a lot of jazz pieces, and do some tune-ups and stuff and arrangements. Even on the fly, I have to write brass quintets at a gig on a napkin because the general's wife has a birthday and nobody told us, and now we have someone has to arrange something. So there were a lot of like great experiences for me to get to that point. Um, and I'd been a working musician out in San Diego as well, and so that in all different areas, and it was fantastic for me. So I had a lot of self education. It's just never ending education in music and exploring. But the idea of becoming a composer didn't really like hit me until I somehow got connected, and I got asked to score something for some students at NIFA that was going to be screened at Warner Brothers. And to me, that was such a big deal because and I had no idea what I was doing. But I would make trips on the weekend to Los Angeles and do speed writing sessions, um, in people's random empty apartments with whatever I got. And I got bit by the bug. And then after I left the Marine Corps, I relocated and moved up to Los Angeles and restarted a whole new life, and went back to school, and I got a lot of experience. I went back on tour with a country band for a year with Alice Wallace, and we did the whole grassroots tour, to South by Southwest, to all these other places. It was one of the best experiences I've had as a touring musician, and in that time, you know, having come to Los Angeles and starting all over again, and building a career, rebuilding networks, and you find yourself having to become a jack of all trades and master of none in a way. at least in my case, to survive. And but it also gave me this wide, vast network of people in many different areas, and it introduced me to a lot of things that I could learn and I was very interested in. And over time, um, really, working, sometimes managing bands, or worked heavily in artist relations. So I am endorsed, and I work, on the side with a company called NS Design and Phil Jones bass amps, and I helped other companies, and kind of NAM show has been like my oyster. So I help a lot of artists with endorsements, and in figuring these endorsement packages out. And I taught how to music direct pop bands, and so just kind of literally taking a giant, marathon circle around all these fields in Hollywood kind of really introduced me to a lot of different subjects and skills. And latest being in the last few years, really becoming a professional filmmaker. I started off as a photography assistant, and then that kind of evolved as we had Symphonic Planet, and that evolved into me really taking filmmaking seriously and turning into, walking the path of the cinematographer as a director of photography. And I had so many musician friends, that they all needed content and music videos made, and they needed it done affordably and quickly. And because a lot of our colleagues, they're struggling artists, right? Or they're working very hard, but the lifestyle in LA is very, it's a difficult one, and to maintain your relevancy, um, it was just really cool. And so for me, with this creative mindset as a composer or a storyteller, I got to utilize these skills and brought it to filmmaking. So I shot a lot of music videos and did a lot of photo shoots, and it really kind of just like took me full circle. And it started complementing Symphonic Planet with our mission and what we were doing. So I brought another skill to the table, not only this kind of this geographer, this world traveler, adventure person, and survivalist, but it also brought, now I can, we both, between both of us, have so many just an array of different skills in so many different areas, that it really, complements what we can create, and we can do a lot. So my journey, took so many different turns, and so did his. And and I, at one point, I was earlier in college, I wanted to be a foreign diplomat. That was my dream for the longest time, is I wanted to do that. And I ended up, being invited to the White House, and I did, I took 20 inner city kids out of DC on tour through Poland, do a performance tour, and I got to experience a little bit of what Capitol Hill was like, and I realized it wasn't for me. I was totally not the right aptitude, not the right personality. I was very creative, and I was very artistic, and I was extremely a people person, and it just wasn't the right fit. So my whole life, I didn't know what I wanted to do as a career, and it was very difficult because I kept on jumping from one place to another, and I, get criticized for not, like, why can't you just pick one thing and focus on that, and be really good at it? And I just couldn't. I was just fidgeting through life, and all these ideas that I wanted to try, until I met Jonas, and we had this idea to build on something. And I think it was the answer that I'd been searching for such a long time, to combine everything that I loved, that I was working towards, or and found a home where all those skills are actually relevant and valuable. And
Right. So,
yeah.
yeah, sorry. So how did that happen? That moment, the eureka moment. Like, what was it? And I know a lot of planning went into what you guys do, and a lot of, like you both just said, the skills that you built over years, and, contemplating about what you want in life. But what was the moment where you guys said, yes, we're doing this, that's it? And, what pushed you over the edge?
I don't know about you. I was broke. I was flat broke in Los Angeles. No money. I was sleeping on his couch, and it was his friend that let me, crash for a little bit. And Jonas happened to be his roommate. So and Jonas was reading a book on how to make friends, and and so this guy on the couch was like, "Well, no better person than to try it on this dude here." So so we became friends that way. At that moment where we were just really at the rock bottom of our careers, of like, what do we do? He didn't get the job at Hans Zimmer's studio. I I was a dry spell, no gigs, nothing. It was just like, it was off season. We weren't touring in the Alice Wallace band. And so it was just super, it was, it was tough. And, someone just like, threw a hand out and gave me, a chance. And so I had this book called 501 Must Take Journeys, and we were just flipping through it. And it's just like, man, I wish, God, I want to go there. I want to go there. I want to go there. Like, this is so much better. Like, we'd be so much happier somewhere else, more epic and cooler than being stuck here, having to slave over these jobs where we don't get paid very well, we're not respected for the work that we do, or we're just like at that low point. So everything is terrible when you're broke and you just have no, like, you're just angry at the world in a way, and you wish you could be doing something else better that would make you feel better.
There was also something about that book
Yeah.
that I remember. Like, I remember being like so almost like done with the music industry or even with music making. I mean, that's also part of like when I became a sound engineer, because I've had all these friends that are like songwriters and trying to make it and all that, and you just see it just never works out for any of them, in a way. And I've like kind of given up on making music myself, so I became a sound engineer making music for other people. And then when we found this book, there was finally some answers like, oh, if we're creating music with a story of like traveling and with this is actually, and not just music because music for people to, oh, here, listen to my song, it's just a song or whatever, it actually has more meaning than that. I realized like, oh, there's something there.
I agree with you. I mean, a big part of that was that a lot of people come to Hollywood to try to become the next big person, like the next big Beyonce, the next big John Mayer, the next big superstar, whatever that is. And a lot of that is following a trend. And the thing is that we were interested in, we didn't know anybody else that was doing that. We needed to fulfill that ourselves and that. But yeah, I mean, like exactly what you're saying.
Yeah. I mean, on the other hand, if you're asking the questions like, when did, was there like a moment where we're like, oh, now we're actually doing this? There was no moment. Like, the story we told right now was just basically kind of how we got started, with, kind of working together. But, it took us many, many years of like trying and being like, okay, you write a thing and I add some strings to it. And then, and our first album that's now on Spotify and everywhere, it's called Destination Imagination. It was literally a collection of these tracks that we wrote inspired by different places that we wanted to go to.
Except for like two of them we actually went.
Two of them we actually went to then, yeah. But we didn't release that until like years later after writing these tracks, because it's you start becoming an artist again and you're like insecure, is this any good, like what do you, and it's like, I'm writing these strings, I'm not getting paid for it, what is this, it's just so, so we've spent a long time like figuring out what we want to do and how we want to do things. And I think where it actually kind of clicked is when we started actually taking our first trip when we went to Death Valley, and we came back. It wasn't just the two of us. We went with, two other friends. And then we came back and we all had this like feeling of like, this is what I want to do in my life.
It was very spiritual. And it was kind of like, there was a lot of internal answers, these gears and these cogs starting to function and work together inside us, and we were all sharing that experience, so we knew that this is what we wanted to do the rest of our lives.
What was interesting about this first trip, what made it so special, was that, and we still haven't found anything that similar, where there's something that's we're musicians, we don't want to just go into the desert and like get drunk or whatever. Like, you know,
Where are you getting
there
this
needs to
drunk
be
thing
like
from?
some purpose that has to do with music. And so we looked up, what
That's
is there in Death
Coachella.
Valley? And so we found this documentary about Death Valley where they were talking about that there's a sound phenomenon there, and it's called the Singing Sand Dunes. And there's like in the middle of nowhere, it's like you drive for hours and hours and hours into the desert, and there's like these big sand dunes, and it looks like the Sahara Desert or something. And it's a sound phenomenon. When the sand goes down the hill, it creates a howling noise. It sounds like a low organ. And that was just so fascinating for us that we just made that our like goal to record that with a good microphone and then make it into virtual instruments that we can then sell for make some money off of it and be like, look, this is from the desert, this is like this, but this is music. And I think that's what got us so excited, and it worked. We went there and they had this whole adventure, whereas like one of our team members like almost passed out because so it's just hot in the desert in the middle of nowhere. And but yeah, we recorded the sound, we got it.
So this is
back.
your idea of fun, huh?
They call it Death Valley.
Yeah, getting passed out, dehydrated, in 100-degree weather.
Right.
Totally.
So
All
what I
right.
want to make sure we do is, because we've been talking about your work a lot, and we do have
Yes.
a clip,
Yes.
and I'm wondering if you can introduce the clip. We'll play it, and I do have a follow-up question for you coming out of it.
That's this guy. You go for it, Jim.
I'll go for it. Yeah. That was pretty soon after we arrived in here, Mexico. We are always on the search for sound phenomena, and one of the most famous ones, we've been talking about this for years. Coming here, going to what's called Chichen Itza, which is one of the wonders of the world, and it's famous for a sound phenomenon. So it's actually a city of Mayan pyramids and all buildings that are still there. That people visit. It's a big tourist attraction. But yeah, it's known for a certain kind of echo. We didn't actually know exactly what it was, but it's basically when you send a sound to the pyramids. We found out it's when you clap in your hands or whatever. Like it has to be a loud like sound like that. It comes back in the voice of an animal. So we went there, and that's not actually in the clip now I'm talking about that. But we were surprised because we just kind of arrived in Mexico, and we just knew kind of like we wanted to find out stories about old Mayan music and instruments. We wanted to meet Mayan people if they still exist. I didn't even know that. It's like so we were just trying to find anything that we can hold on to for us as musicians, and so we stumbled upon so first of all, Chichen Itza, it's a big tourist attraction, so there's vendors everywhere that are trying to sell you stuff, and it's little souvenirs like everywhere in the world where you have tourist places, right? But we went off a little bit, into the woods where the people were a little bit less aggressive, like trying to sell you stuff, and all of a sudden we find one place that had instruments, like flutes and all kinds of things, and this is
Perfect.
This clip is about.
Perfect.
El instrumento maya.
Sí.
Con esta acá.
Ah, sí, sí, sí.
Ajá.
¿Tú hablas inglés?
Un poquito.
Un poquito de español.
Ajá.
Quena?
Es una quena.
Sí, sí, like.
Ahí está.
This is really hard.
Como que soplas una botella. Así tienes que soplar eso. Ahí está.
Wow.
No, así como lo. Ve como ve.
How do you?
Ay, ya está. Mucha práctica.
Sí.
Mucha práctica.
Sí.
Mucha práctica.
Sí.
Mucha
It
práctica.
means we have to practice a lot.
Yeah. Okay. So how much is it?
$3.50.
350. 350.
Okay.
Gracias, señor.
Gracias. Sí, una Kenia.
Kena.
Kena.
Kena. No Kenia. Kena.
Kena.
Kena. A ver.
Is it?
Kena.
Yeah.
Sí.
It's old Mayan.
Es un instrumento maya.
Un
Sí,
instrumento
es
maya.
donde se hacían las danzas, maya dancing, antes, de los mayas.
Sí.
Y en maya es tunkul.
So that's beautiful stuff. And my question for you following out of this is, anyone that sees a movie, sees a credit roll that, it's the last 5 minutes of the movie. It takes all the names to go by. And I think there's even a credit roll designer these days. So when you consider all the pre-production, production, post-production roles, what exactly, it's probably easier to be reductive here. What don't you do on your production yourselves?
Translating from Spanish into English.
Oh yeah. I make mistakes on translating Spanish. So I made some funny ones.
But let's see what like specifically in the production. We have it in between. Like he's doing color grading. I don't touch color grading.
Yeah.
I do the sound. He doesn't really touch sound. Like we have very like specific roles where we do certain things.
So I'm usually, when it comes to film production, I'm usually the camera guy. At least for this episode, I'm primarily the DP, or I'm directing, because we also have a film crew here that sometimes goes, from like 4 other people to 7. So I'll usually handle like on set camera work. Jonas and I will collaborate on figuring out the story, but he also is directing, because he's directing as if he's editing. So he's thinking ahead, and then he edits, and then once he has his edits together, then I will do the color grading, correction. And then once that is the picture is locked, then we actually do the underscoring ourselves. We'll do the music ourselves as well, and we'll include other things. If we can include other music that's local, then that's definitely going to do that. But we'll complement the underscoring that way.
Yeah.
So and then he does the sound editing, and we'll do dialogue cleaning.
I think technically that's the beauty of it, in a way, of what we've done, and also our past careers, in a way that technically we're kind of able to put it all together between the two of us. And now, depending on what we've just saw was just a little excerpt from our YouTube show. It's called Out of Tune. It's more like a quick run and gun thing where we literally just film ourselves and then edit it together. And usually we have like a third person then with us, maybe like if there's a friend visiting or somebody that we meet here or something, that we just hand the camera. It's like, can you film a little bit? So there's the two of us in the shot, and that's kind of where we throw everything together. But then now we started filming a bigger show. Where we're taking more time for the story and setting up the cameras and all that. And
it's a much bigger production than the others, because that clip is from our YouTube reality show called Out of Tune, and so that is a show about the two of us trying to shoot another show, and all the things that could possibly go wrong, or just like the behind the scenes of us trying to find the story. And there's a few episodes. One of them, Jonas has to find a cello. And it's kind of one of my favorite episodes, because he has to go through this hardship of in a completely different country trying to figure out how to buy a cello or to find one, and he can't find one until the very end. But the other show is Working Title, and it's a show about the two of us, about two musicians traveling the world to answer a question of what does it mean to live. Basically, the whole summary of our whole existence of inception of Symphonic Planet, and we're exploring these concepts of the human condition and emotions to share what we learn about different music cultures. So each episode's about a certain emotion, and it was great because that's why it's so nice when you actually move and you live in another place. You give yourself the time and flexibility to develop those connections and find what the story is, because going for 10 days, you're not going to get, the content and access to the things that you would normally get. And in this case, when we discovered these two very iconic specific music styles to this region, one being called trova and the other one called harana, Jonas, we found that the story is, this particular one is about what does it mean to love. And Jonas goes on his journey to turn in what's called to become what's called a trovador, which is a romantic, traditional Yucatecan, musician. And there's a whole storyline with him reconnecting with that and trying to impress a girl, and so we're still in production, and
Yeah.
but
So
yeah,
leave
I
you in
mean,
suspense, right?
oh, totally, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's been really, and so this is like there's a different system for each show that we're doing, a different style, and the production process is similar, but
Well, yeah, for the big show, basically the difference, we take more time and hire more people to have a more like a professional TV ready show, and also because if we the both of us are in the picture, and with other people, etc. We just need to hire other camera people,
Yeah.
because otherwise it's either I film him or he films me.
and it's been working out really well. Instead of flying in people from the States, or we actually hire local
Yeah.
a local crew here, and that has really opened up a lot. It's just everything the decisions we make to use local, to do this, to stay here longer, it just opens up so many more opportunities and opens up more information and access to these things that normally you just probably would miss out on if you're just speed filming.
So what's next on the calendar for you?
We do not know. And
we look at the map and we're like, well, Cuba is really close. I always
Yeah.
wanted to go to Cuba.
so we
Spin the
want to go.
globe and
Well, yeah, but here it's like it's so.
Well, yeah, we
it's so
are
close.
basically like a stone's throw away from Cuba. So that is definitely a huge option for us. Our next episode, because this episode's definitely a lot more focused on Jonas's story, and so the next one's probably gonna be focused on mine. But we're gonna go at a different angle than what you would typically expect out of Cuba, which is Havana and the Havana culture, salsa music, and mambo.
Sure.
I think we want to explore how an episode, the human emotion about anger, and how that is channeled into something productive. I mean, that's still in the works, but Cuba has a very one of the things that Cuba surprisingly has that's pretty big is a heavy metal scene, and so Cuban heavy metal is not widely known. So it's an Easter egg, and
And I'm really curious about that.
which is interesting because I am not like love music, Latin music and romantic music and this stuff. That's definitely been my cup of tea. It was his, but I mean, performance wise, Jonas is what's again like back to the whole mission about what Symphonic Planet is about, expanding your comfort zone. Jonas has overcome a lot of his own like personal fears of being a performer. He played a concert with these local trova musicians in a nearby town called Motul, and they kind of like adopted him, or they made him an honorary citizen of the town now. And he hadn't performed on stage in a while, even let alone play a full like hour long or 2 hour long concert, and he did that with them, and him singing songs for another girl, and pushing these boundaries of his comfort zone. He's doing that. So since he's been here, he's as a person he's evolved, which is great, which is the whole point of this the show, is that it's not like this is not, while some things are staged in terms of the setting, everything has to stay as authentic and real as possible. This has to be a true experience caught on camera.
the Cuban metal scene sounds very intriguing, and maybe we'll get to hear Perez Prado pipe through a Marshall.
That'd be pretty cool, and it's cool because this is Jonas's background. He's an expert in heavy metal music. I am not.
Okay.
You know, so I think we picked these things where we're not like, for me, there's a lot to discover. So I'll be able to find that, well, he gets to kind of guide me through this. And so we'll see what that looks like. But I think first, we're going to finish this episode. We're going to showcase it here. We're going to screen it. And, you know, I think a lot of the community here is very excited for that. So
Well, we've had a wonderful time talking with you, but I want to make sure our audience knows how to stay in touch with you. So I'm hoping maybe you can give us your social media, your websites. How do folks stay in touch and connected?
absolutely. You can find us if you type in Symphonic Planet. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us on Instagram, just like that, Symphonic Planet. Our website is symphonicplanet.com. Same thing with Facebook, Symphonic Planet, everything. And just tell me, you know, we're the only Symphonic Planet. So so far. So if you type in to your social media channels, you can find us anywhere there.
And you can find our music if you post stories or on Instagram, for example, and you search for music and you look for Symphonic Planet. There's actually a lot of us in there. A lot of our music, you know, inspired by things, you know, and written at different places around the world. So you can check that out and add it to your story.
Yeah, we're part of part of the Facebook family sound collection. So you can find our music if you're a creator on Facebook or
Yummy,
Instagram.
yummy.
And
Yeah, and there's a lot more.
So I
music.
take it if we have that string Symphonic Planet in almost any search engine or social media platform, we're going to find you.
Yep.
Yes, and you can actually use our music without any issues for free on Facebook and Instagram because we are part of the Facebook family.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Lovely.
So
Lovely.
if you make videos
Fantastic.
and yeah, that's how it works.
Well, we've just had a great time. Anything you'd like to say before we wrap things up?
No, thank you so much, Warren. Thank you so much. You know, Nikki, and it really, it's really nice. And this is the first interview we've done since we came out here to the Yucatan. So it's kind of nice to get back on talking to, you know, the people.
Talking to people back home, even though this is our home now.
Yeah.
But
And we don't know what our home is going to be like next. But you know, it's really cool because every time we get to you know, we get to share something new that we're doing. So there's not really having to recycle anything. So
I can always give you the LA update after the call, after.
Yeah, and guys,
For that.
let's catch up. Let's catch up after a couple of other countries.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure, absolutely.
sounds good.
Jonas and Noor, lovely couple guys. Symphonic Planet, find it, watch it, love it. And with that, we have a wrap.
All right, thank you.